Mr. Gerald Gam, your next question, please.
The Ministry of Manpower adopts a three-pronged approach to protect foreign domestic workers against abusers. First, we educate employers on their responsibilities of care towards their foreign domestic workers through the employer's orientation program, such as the provision of adequate food and rest and acceptable accommodation for their foreign domestic workers. Employers are also reminded that the acts of mistreatment and abuse, including threats and physical punishment, are not tolerated, and there are heavy penalties for offenders. Similarly, during the Settling In program, all newly arrived foreign domestic workers are educated on their rights and channels to seek help should they encounter any well-being issues. For example, foreign domestic workers can call the police if they are abused, or the hotline set up by MOM or the Center for Domestic Employees, CDE, if they have employment difficulties or other well-being issues. Second, we work with CDE to conduct interviews with first-time foreign domestic workers in their native language within the first few months of their employment. It is a form of check-in with the workers to ensure that they have settled well in their jobs. It also helps us to detect problems and cases of abuse early. In addition, since 2017, doctors are asked in the 6-monthly medical examination form to report to the police or MOM immediately if they spot signs of abuse during the mandatory 6-monthly medical examination. Third, as a strong deterrent, the Penal Code was enhanced in 2020 to double the punishment against individuals who abuse vulnerable victims, including foreign domestic workers. In Parliament last week, various members, including Mr. Desmond Chu, Ms. Carrie Tan, and Ms. Yeo Wan Ling, asked about measures to prevent foreign domestic worker abuse. While most employers make an effort to build good relationships with their foreign domestic workers, some treat them unreasonably. To strengthen support for foreign domestic workers and reduce the incidence of abuse, MOM is reviewing measures in 3 areas. First, making greater use of existing touchpoints with foreign domestic workers. Employment agents should have an interest to ensure that the foreign domestic workers settle in well. Employment agents, should have an interest to make sure that the foreign domestic workers that they place settle in well, especially those who are working in Singapore for the first time. One-on-one interviews also for the newly arrived foreign domestic workers was, when they start with the new employers, will also be enhanced. We are also looking at mandatory off days for foreign domestic workers to be able to interact with the community and to seek help should they need to. Second, in terms of reporting by doctors, we will work with the medical fraternity to better identify signs of abuse or distress. Third, our partner organizations such as CDE and FAST can also expand their outreach and engagement to strengthen the network of support to foreign domestic workers. MOM will provide an update on the review in due course. As echoed by members of this House and Singaporeans, abuse of foreign domestic workers must not be tolerated. We will work together with the stakeholders to strengthen support for foreign domestic workers and build a culture of respect for them in our homes and in our community.
Mr. Gerald Gam.
I thank the MOS for her response. I understand that she said that the doctors are now required during the 6-monthly medical examination to check for signs of abuse. My question is that are there right now any professional or legal consequences for doctors who fail to report suspected abuse in their patients? And are there plans to, if there are not, are there plans to increase the penalties for non-reporting? Because I understand right now the SMC Ethical Code only obliges doctors to report suspected abuse if their patient has diminished mental capacity or is a minor. Secondly, does MOM have any plans to, or does MOM currently screen prospective employers of FDWs for potential red flags, for example, past incidents of violent behavior, police reports made against them, and so on? And lastly, would an abused domestic worker who has no phone or day off, how would they be able to report abuse? Thank you.
MOS Gan.
We are working with the medical fraternity to look at how to make it more objective for the doctors to detect and to report suspected cases of abuse. Currently, it is in the form where doctors are required to report if they detect signs of distress or abuse. To my knowledge, I think the main issue now is that it may not be so easy and discernible for doctors to detect abuse cases, and it does require some objectivity in this review, and that's exactly what we are doing with the medical fraternity. The second point about screening of employers, we do take note of employers of foreign domestic workers where past complaints were lodged against them. We also take note of employers who frequently change their foreign domestic workers. Of course, there are also feedback sometimes that we receive on employers, feedback given to us by public members or neighbors. So these are things that we take into account when we assess the suitability of employers for hiring foreign domestic workers. And the third, for foreign domestic workers who currently do not have a day off or have mobile phones, we do reach out to them, principally, through the one-on-one interviews that CDE conducts with foreign domestic workers in their native language. Actually, these interviews have been very useful in helping us detect signs of distress early, in the foreign domestic workers. We also rely on public members, neighbors, community at large to help spot cases of mistreatment of foreign domestic workers. Going forward, we will want to look at other ways to strengthen the touch points that will allow us to detect cases of abuse early. And I have covered some of them earlier on. Thank you.
Mr. Lim Biao-Chan.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister of State, how does the Ministry of Manpower balance the interests of employers who may be falsely accused by the foreign domestic worker? I've got received feedback that there are occasions when a foreign domestic worker may not want to work in a particular family because they have to look after elderly or the house is too big. So they lodge a complaint to their embassy, and at the end of the day, no further action was taken against the employer, and the foreign domestic worker then gets a free transfer out. And in the meanwhile, the employer is stuck because he is not allowed to hire another foreign domestic worker. He is also stuck in the sense that he has this so-called report made against them. So how do we balance the interests of the foreign domestic worker versus an innocent employer who may be desperately looking to get another worker? Thank you.
MOS Gan.
Member of Parliament, Mr. Lim Biao-Chan has raised a very good point. Just as there are cases of employers mistreating foreign domestic workers, MOM also receives reports and complaints from employers about foreign domestic workers who are of poor conduct, poor performance, and sometimes mistreating the people whom they are supposed to help to take care of. So what MOM does is really we will have our investigating officers to look into the facts of the case. Usually it involves a series of interviews with both the employers and employees, and we look at evidence to draw a conclusion on what could have caused the problem. Very often actually it has to do with miscommunication. Very often also it's because of poor understanding of what employers are expected to do, what the foreign domestic workers are expected to do, and that's when we will also step in to clarify with both parties. Now, I think it's absolutely important that we try to improve the match between the employer and the foreign domestic workers. Some employers may have certain special requirements or may have standards that are higher than the others. Some foreign domestic workers, may have more capacity than others when it comes to work. We also recognize that our foreign domestic workers come from different countries with different cultural practices and norms and skills and readiness to work. So, what we want to do is to, make sure that foreign domestic workers who are deployed to the households are able to fit well. Now, if there is a poor fit, either from the perspective of the foreign domestic worker or from the employer, I think it is best that we try, to adjust, to redeploy the foreign domestic worker to other households instead of forcefully and, prolonging the problem for both parties. So really the answer, is in improving communication, clarifying the roles of both the employer as well as the domestic worker, and thirdly, in investigation to make sure we get to the root of the problem. But ultimately, for the sake of the employer as well as the foreign domestic worker, we want to make sure that they have a good relationship with each other and are able to get along well. Thank you.
Mr. Zulkarnain Abdul Rahim.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir, I filed a PQ on this, so I thought it's an opportune time for me to raise it. Thank you, MOS, for the approach, the three-pronged approach to better protect our foreign domestic workers here. Maybe on two clarifications, on touch points, I propose that perhaps to increase the touch points, whether or not there can be some mandatory requirement for the employment agencies to have some responsibility throughout during the period of employment of the foreign domestic workers. Secondly, beyond physical health, and maybe we should also look at the mental health and the state of mind of the foreign domestic workers, whether there can be any checks in terms of psychological treatment and counselling for the workers during those period of time. If the task force can take a look at those areas as well. Thank you.
MOS Gan.
Well, I thank member for the suggestions. I think these are good suggestions which we will take into consideration. Actually, currently employment agencies, although it's not mandated for them to check in on the foreign domestic workers, we do know of some employment agencies that take the extra step in checking with the employers as well as the foreign domestic workers, on their state of well-being, whether they're getting along well, and whether there are adjustment issues. And we think this is a good practice, and there is scope for us to look at institutionalizing it so that there is one more touch point, for foreign domestic workers to raise concerns if they do encounter problems in the first few months of their employment, especially for those who are working in Singapore for the first time. As to checking on their mental health and providing counselling support, I think this is certainly an area that we will be interested to pursue. Thank you.